the next one is B, and then we start from here. We see a 0, again B, C or D, another 0, either B or C. We see a 1, definitely a C, so that becomes a C. Then we see a 0, again possibly B, C or D. We see a 1, definitely a D.
Ah, okay, gotcha. So it still works. It didn't really matter how you organized it.
Yes, it doesn't really matter which way you go. And secondly, the amount of information compression that you end up with is still the same.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so that is how your Dijkstra's, sorry, my bad, Huffman algorithm works. It essentially picks up those frequencies and builds the tree bottom up. And that is how it gets into this final set of trees that has all of those notes compressed together. Now, this doesn't only apply to music. You can imagine that this applies to text as well. Or you can think about a scenario where you can also apply it to longer text. So let's say that you want to write a compression algorithm that is solely dedicated to the English language, right? So let's say specifically the English language. So in that scenario, you would, so in general, if you want to encode all possible things, you would be encoding A, B, C, D, and all of those individual characters. So you have possibly 26 possibilities, and you encode those given their frequencies. And it is a general known case that E is the most frequent character in all of English language. So you would use the least amount of bits required to represent E, the character E. Now, if you want to look a step above in the hierarchy, you can say that I'm only going to, because A, B, C, D, E can also be used to transliterate all other languages in the English pronunciation, right? So let's say that you're only going to look at English words. So then you have and, if, blah, 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 all of those English words. And then you say that I'm now going to look at the frequency of English words and then figure out which word is the most frequent word and then use them to represent this in this Huffman encoding. So you can go higher and higher levels as long as you maintain that tau, where that tau basically means the set of possibilities that you're trying to represent, and the frequency over those tau values is the one that you're using in your Huffman encoding, right? Okay, so essentially the algorithm looks something like this, where you have an input of frequencies and you want to output an encoding tree where you have n possibilities, that is n being your number of tau values, and you want an encoding tree with n leaves. So you again create a priority queue with respect to the frequency values. You pick, so you insert every frequency value to your priority queue, and then you pick the lowest two cost or the two lowest frequencies, let's say I and J. You get that from the priority queue. You create a new node called FK that is the summation of these two nodes, and then you insert it back into the tree, whereas you're deleting the I and J minimum most values from the queue, and you keep on iterating along that to finally create your tree. So again, you're going to use a binary heap, and the time complexity for creating that and manipulating that is n log n. So applying Huffman encoding to compress a particular thing, anything, would have a time complexity of n log n. Okay. So up to now, we have talked about 3 or 4 algorithms that are greedy algorithms. So Kruskal, Prim's, Dijkstra's, this Huffman encoding. You can imagine that again, Huffman encoding is a greedy algorithm because every time we are picking the element with the lowest frequency. So all of those algorithms till now that we have looked at were optimal, right? So they would give you the optimal solution even if you followed a greedy approach to solving them.
Clarification on that. It being a greedy algorithm, it's greedy such that the lowest frequency elements, the lowest frequency elements are at the bottom most of
Yes,
the tree,
it is.
right?
Yes, essentially it is greedy because every time we are picking two elements that has the lowest frequency, so let's say F1 and F2, then we are combining this to this node. and again picking another two set of lowest frequency nodes. So let's say F5 and F1 plus F2, combining them to get this, combining the next two lowest frequencies F4 and F3 to get this, and so on, right? So that is why we call it greedy, because
because it ensures the least frequent elements are at the bottom of the tree and thus have the longest codes.
Yes, yes, but that is a side effect of this algorithm, right? The main reason that it is greedy, because we are only looking at the lowest frequency every time.
Right.
Right. So that would make the next thing a bit more clear, because sometimes, so in this case, or for Dijkstra or Kruskal or whatever, that worked out where we're picking the lowest cost edge or the lowest cost frequency node, that worked out, and that also gave us the optimal solution, even if we are picking the closest best possible sub solution that we can. Right. In this scenario, we were picking the lowest most frequency. In case of prims, we were picking the closest most shortest edge, and so on. Right. So that was an easy solution, but it also ended up being the optimal solution. But remember that greedy solutions are not always going to give you the optimal solution. So what you are saying is, it is ensuring that the lowest frequency nodes are always ending up in the lower part of your tree. That is what we get when we apply greedy to this, and that is our optimal solution.
But, right, because if we chose the most frequent first, then the most frequent elements would have the longest Huffman encodings, which would be opposite of what we're after.
Right? Yes. Since we are using the lowest okay, so couple things. Since we are using the lowest frequency, since we are only looking at the lowest frequency every time, that is what makes it greedy. Since in our algorithm, the lowest frequency ends up in the lower part of your tree, that is what makes your algorithm optimal. Right? These two things might not always be true. You need to imagine a scenario where if you pick the greedy solution or the sub solution, you end up getting a solution that is not optimal. That is still a solution, but not optimal. So imagine playing Tetris, right? You're getting those blocks that are coming down. And if you always greedily place them in the area that is most convenient, you will still solve it. But if you now, instead, if you plan as to where you can place this and possibly the next one correctly, then you might end up with a much quicker solution. Right. So greedy does not always mean that you are going to get an optimal solution. You will get a solution. Let's play tic-tac. So let's say that we are playing tic-tac-toe. You can always play tic-tac-toe such that you are stopping the other person from getting all the rows or the diagonals or whatever, right? But that is not the optimal solution. The optimal solution would be for you to win, where you have to plan across multiple stages in the future to get you a win, similar to chess or whatever. So you can play chess where you're playing such that as long as you eat the most closest pawn or the queen or whatever, you still get to play, but that won't be the optimal solution to play chess, right? So there is a difference between greedy and optimal solutions. Greedy solutions would get you a solution, but that might not be optimal always.
Right, because we can make the, can you argue that choosing the most frequent element each time is a greedy algorithm, but it's not optimal in this particular case?
Yes, in this particular case, it is not optimal because we are going to get the opposite of that, but it is still a greedy solution.
Okay. Okay. So just to clarify, it can still be greedy, but it could just, you need to make sure that it's optimal. You need to make sure that your greedy choice is in line with your end goal.
Yes. Right? And also optimality is subjective, because if we always pick the most frequent node and our criteria is we want to encode it such that we get the largest possible encoding possible, where I want to increase my size of my file, then that is again an optimal solution.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So all the algorithms we have looked at so far are greedy and are optimal, but The next algorithm that we are going to look at is again greedy, but it is not an optimal solution. So let's look at the particular problem. So let's say that we have this set of vertices, right? So A, B, C, D up to something. So we have these dots. These are your vertices. These represent towns in a particular, let's say, country, right? Now, let's say that you have been tasked to create schools in these towns where you want to create as minimum a number of schools as possible, but you want every kid to have a school that is within a 30-mile radius of these towns. So all of the edges that you see connecting different towns here are basically towns that are within 30-mile radius of a particular town. So A is within 30 miles of B, D, E, H, I, and K. F is within 30 miles of E and G, and so on, right? So you would want to place a school that is, you want to place schools that are as few schools as possible, but every child can be at least 30 miles, but not more away from a particular school. So if you place a school at this particular vertex E, that can serve 4 towns, E itself, but also A, F, and G, right? Then you would have to place schools other way here such that it covers all vertices altogether. So you can also imagine this thing to be cell phone towers, right? So place as few cell phone towers as possible that can increase your coverage, but also reduce your total cost, right? Okay. So the question is, what is the minimum number of schools needed in order to cover this graph where no school is 30 miles away from a particular student, right? So that is what we call the set cover problem, where we want to find out sets that cover the entire set of vertices in a particular graph. Okay. Where sets is defined by some particular criteria. In our case, it was adjoining vertices that have 30-mile radius. Okay. So if there is, so in the previous example there, if there is an edge between 2 towns, then we know that it is 30 miles from each other. So what we want is for each town X, they have to be placed in a particular set SX, which basically says that it cannot be more than 30 miles away from a particular town, and a particular school would basically be covering these set of towns. So your input would be a set of elements B, that is your individual towns, and you have a set of sets. The output would be a selection of sets whose union would basically result in coverage of all of those towns, right? So the cost that we are trying to minimize is the number of these sets that we need to pick. Okay. So you can imagine this, but you can try to solve this particular problem again as a greedy solution. So what can we do? We can pick the town that has the most number of edges. That means that placing a school in the middle of that town